Hi everybody, I'm Tom Alexander with CrossCountry Consulting, and welcome back to our Field Notes podcast. Today, we are going to cover record to report and AI along the course of that process. And we've got some bold takes and some views today that we want to share with you. We want to talk about the real-time close, fact or fiction. We want to talk about the budget process. How long do you need to take to get through a budget process with real-time forecasting, scenario planning at your fingertips? What are the skills that are required of the future? Data science and accounting, perhaps, product building there. So we'll get into that in detail. And I've got a colleague with me today that's an expert in this process that I want to introduce here in a second. He's joining us. Harris Goffstein is a partner in business transformation, and he has been doing this stuff for a very long time. And we've been talking to a lot of clients about this topic, record to report. Harris, welcome to the podcast. Thanks for being here today. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me, Tom, on the podcast. I'm very excited to be here. As you mentioned, I'm a partner in the business transformation practice at CrossCountry. Dating back 25 years ago, before record report was even a thing. It was just closing the books and creating the budget, right? Started helping CFOs get it right the first time, whether that's from a business process perspective, a technology enablement perspective, or most importantly, how their people use tools and processes to optimize processes, reporting, close, and so on. Over that 25 years, so much has happened, right? Going from green screen-based computing screens to now the world of AI, right? So I'm excited to be here to talk today about what we're seeing with our clients and how we're helping them in the market. And then the next-gen capabilities that aren't even here yet today that we're waiting for to get here.
Yeah, the CFO role has changed so much in that time. So can't wait to hear your insights. Thanks for being here. But Harris, I understand you're a Ravens fan.
I understand you're a Steelers fan.
A Steelers fan, yes. And we're actually going to the game this weekend together. And the Steelers are in a very rough spot. I actually was just going to say, should we just go to the bar? How are you feeling about that? Give us a take on the game.
Yeah, I will. First of all, just so you're aware, I've had season tickets for 30 years, and I sit in the upper decks, and I still sit in the upper decks. So we'll be happy to have another Steelers fan in the upper decks with me, and we'll treat you right, though. In previewing the game, just myself, like I do every week, who are the two coaches with the most tenure in the NFL?
Okay, I know this one, of course. Mike Tomlin and John Harbaugh.
Yeah, and so 18, 19 years, I think, respectively, they've been coaching their teams. And we're going to be here today talking about tons of change, the change that's happening in weeks, days, and months, right? These guys have been leading their teams for 18 or 19 years. We're both not having a great season, so it'll be interesting to see at the end of the year if there's any change on one of our teams as far as leaders or coaches. So
the Steelers are headed in the wrong direction. I would highly encourage a change there, and they could use AI wherever they can get it. So that's what I'm looking forward to. But looking forward to a great weekend with you. So
we'll definitely have some fun at the game. I'm looking forward to it as well. So maybe a side bet after this. We'll figure out what our bet is.
Sounds good.
All right.
So Harris, let's jump into it.
Yeah.
Record to report. We're talking to a lot of clients about AI, how they're incorporating that into their journey. But what we're seeing out there, clients are either struggling to get started, or they have started and they're struggling to pick up velocity. They're stuck. Tell us, what are you seeing out there in the market?
Yeah, I think it's first starting with the CFOs. We're getting interaction with a lot of CFO teams, and the first question is, what tools should we be implementing for AI, and what should we be doing? And that's the first conversation we have with them and say, hey, let's take a step back here and let's talk about the processes that where you want to embed automation, you want to embed AI, and let's go deep on those processes and talk about them. It's not about the tool, it's about how we're going to change the process. And with that, that could be overwhelming sometimes for a finance team or an accounting team that has gone through process reviews previously. And this is where our approach is to start small, pick some real examples, and you don't have to automate or I'm going to make this word up, AIify everything right off the bat, right? You go to a process, you start small, you go deep, and you look at the areas where AI or automation can really help, and then you tackle them. And you build on that, you get momentum. So a lot of what we're hearing and doing starts with the education and just making sure we're at the right starting point, which is not tool, which is process, and then making sure we're going deep on those processes so there's real use cases being applied, and the client can understand how they're going to get real tangible value from the start.
The iterative approach is absolutely something that we're seeing, and we're seeing clients step into this. So you may set up an agent that does primarily automation, but then progresses into intelligence over time and being autonomous. So just get started with one of those sub-processes is what you're saying. And one of the other things that clients are really coming to us with is show us the use case. Show us the use case. Similar to what you're saying about just plugging technology in is not the way to go at this. So they say, show us the use case. We say, show us the process, show us what your data set looks like, because it's not plug and play on these kind of projects.
And we actually marry all three of those things together, right? The process, the data, and the use case. And that's how you get really focused in starting small, getting a real use case. And once the teams and the people working with see the power and the impact of something small, it really turns on lights and like, oh, wow, I didn't realize that we could do that with an LLM like Copilot or Claude.
That's right.
So very powerful.
At your side. Okay, so FP&A. I know you've been close to FP&A for a long time. This is something you're passionate about. And the budget process is something that is still benchmarking at close to 60 days. We've seen clients at 120, 180, which is a lot of time to be spent whenever on day one when you go live, that budget is immediately wrong and you've started the reforecast. So AI is one of the things that can really help cut down that cycle time. So what is the pathway to bringing AI into the mix on the budget process and what you're seeing?
Yeah, I have a great story for you to kind of answer this one. Most people think that we need AI to do the forecast for us or do the budget for us and automate that so we get the numbers. And they're right, there is plenty of opportunity there, but I think it starts with the orchestration and of the budget process. I was working with a VP of finance a couple weeks ago, and he says to me, my team just took 2 months having meetings, talking about the budget process, budget guidance, budget templates. And now that we've talked about it for 2 months, we actually have to go execute. And it's going to take us another month to build all the tools that we need to give to the teams to do the budget and forecast. And I said, well, have you ever thought about using any AI tools for that? Simple, basic AI tools. Like if you would have just recorded your meetings and then use transcript and use Copilot and Claude, one of the LLMs, to summarize your meetings and create your documentation, your budget process would have went from 2 months of preparation and orchestration to about a week. And you could have then decided to start your budget process later, or maybe bring it forward because you spent less time on orchestration and more time putting the data in the people's hands so they can forecast the correct results. And then so with that, two couple other things that happen. Once you kind of get the orchestration out of the way, things like automating data, right? Getting the data sets that are common to the budget process on set it and forget it, right? There's no need for people to be downloading spreadsheets and loading them up to tools anymore. Understanding the drivers, right, that you're using. We've been using drivers forever, but we now have the opportunity to use events, activities, things we've never used before, right, and populate them at such scale and such as with using historical data to provide insights to the process. And what that really leads us to is rolling forecasts. And we've been talking about with clients about rolling forecasts forever. They haven't been able to get there. Imagine if you have the orchestration process staged, the data staged, and alignment on drivers, right? You go from doing an annual budget and monthly forecast to doing planning events and taking archives and cuts of your data when your team is ready and confident in the result. And this is how you're harnessing and using the power of these tools together to really optimize back to what you said. How do you get the budget process from 60 days plus to 30 or less, maybe even a week or two in an optimal world?
Yeah, business interaction is sometimes where this process starts to stretch and the debate back and forth. But as you said, if you can get the data right and agreed to, if you can get the drivers focused on, and you're getting the business to consistently react to those drivers, it's a continuous conversation. And then there are no surprises during that budget process. That's where you can really tighten things up. And that's just a process issue. That has nothing to do with AI. Yeah. But AI is helping you actually use those drivers in a way that is instructive, is getting you accuracy in your forecast.
Yeah, I may use this term a couple times throughout the rest of the podcast, but I talk a lot with our clients about changing the starting point, right? And when they want to talk about transformation, it's not always the holy grail of transformation. Transformation can just be changing the starting point. And what we just talked through around orchestration, staging data, and having smart drivers changes the starting point every day for where people in the FP&A team start and the work that they're doing when they get in versus the orchestration that they may have had to do in the past to get to that solid starting point.
Yeah, so a lot of big changes we just talked about there and major efficiency to be gained if you drive focus around this. And part of that is tooling. So don't want to lead with the tooling. We just led with the process and how you orchestrate it, right? So we're practicing what we preach here. But there are a lot of great tools out there in the market, and the combination of some of these tools actually is a great way to get at, finally, as you said, scenario planning, rolling forecasts, et cetera. What are some of the tools that you're working with and coming across?
Yeah, there's really three flavors of tools that we're seeing out there. I'll start one with like the connected planning platforms, things like an Anaplan, a Workday Adaptive, a OneStream. Those are the tools that we've been using forever to do our budgeting and forecasting processes. And now the software companies are starting to put AI agents, AI capabilities in there. And our clients are asking, well, what's in the tools we already own and how do we enable them? How do we use them? So that's one. The second is we're talking in the previous question about data staging, right? And using tools like Snowflake, Databricks, which have a lot of intelligence in them, where you're starting to stage data sets in a more consistent way and actually starting to get to data sets around drivers, operational drivers, event-driven drivers that you've never had access to. And that middle layer of a data staging area combined with the connected platform is hugely powerful in consistency and integrity of results. But I think the final thing that people may not recognize is there's still components, right? You have your connected EPM platform, you have a data layer. You still may need AI assistants or agents to help string it together to get the workflow end to end and really optimize the process. And while those three things sound like a lot, and people might say, well, which one do I start with? I think in a fully optimized solution, you have a little bit of all three. But our goal and what we're doing a lot is educating our clients on those three areas, how they work together, and how in an optimal world they would improve the budget and planning process to be able to do things like scenario planning or predictive forecasting.
Yeah, nobody that made investments in Snowflake or Databricks a few years ago is regretting that now, right? No. They're piling data into that. They're building agents on top of that to streamline the data sets and then digesting them into the EPM tools that you just called out.
Yeah, and it's going back to activities like setting the table and changing the starting point. That's exactly what those tools are doing. So when the FP&A analysts get in there to start doing their forecast and budgets, they can actually look at the data and start using the data and not figure out how you get the data in the system.
Okay, so that is a great segue into our next question and what we wanted to talk about. So you've got this agent by your side. It's compiling all of your data set. While you sleep, you come in. You are now the FP&A analyst of the future. What does that look like? What do you have at your disposal?
Yeah, the FP&A analyst of today lives in spreadsheets, lives in Excel. They don't want to live in spreadsheets and Excel. They're excited about these new tools. They're inquisitive about these new tools, and they want to know how it can help them. We're seeing a lot of examples where people are just starting to be inquisitive and doing things. So, for instance, your FP&A analysts, they're doing less spreadsheet jockeying, right? They are more fluent in these tools, and they're starting to use these tools for things like variance analysis, things like creating visualization, and they're starting with storytelling first. Imagine if you could come in every morning and have a Gen AI tool give you the story, right? And then you go work backwards through the numbers to confirm the story. Where today, you're taking all morning to wrangle the data, so you might be able to get the story to the CFO by the end of the day. The FP&A analyst role is shifting, and it's shifting towards starting with storytelling and using the tools to get the story right, and ultimately then confirm and back into the analysis that told you that story. And it's a different way to work, but if you look at the final product of the FP&A cycle, it's all about the story. So why not start with the story first and just start crafting the story as you go versus waiting till the last minute to tell a story, right? And that's the role of the FP&A analyst in the future.
And by their side, I would assume they've got an LLM tool that they're using, they're calling on, they're fishing into their data sets, or they built an agent that is, as we said, orchestrating all the data for them, putting it on the silver platter.
Yeah, and based on level of maturity, one of those three or maybe all of those three. But I think it starts with the inquisitiveness and just saying, what can an LLM even do for me, right? And having a responsible, trustworthy area where they can test things and play with things. So like, oh, wow, I didn't realize that I could upload this type of file into an LLM and just ask questions, and it could group and organize data just like it takes me 6 hours to do in a pivot table, right? So that point is where the light bulb comes on. It's like they're changing the way they work almost daily, right? And it's pretty cool, and it's important because the speed of change is not slowing down, right? And they need to be on the forefront to accelerate their work products.
And we've spent a lot of time working with clients on how to use these tools, how to do and build prompts, right?
Yeah.
And we've seen so many aha moments of, wow, I didn't realize you could get that deep with that, or I can now elicit some kind of result that I thought I had to wait for month-end close for, and it's really at your fingertips, and it's a good enough 80-20 result that you can access on a daily basis.
Yeah, and we'll talk about it a little more, but it's our jumpstart approach, right? We don't want people to have to think everything has to be perfect, data has to be aligned, process has to be perfect to implement AI. Let's take a jumpstart approach. Let's see what you have that's really good, the tools that you have that you know how to use, and let's build off that and iterate, right? So you can go from really good to great as your team gets more mature and learns these tools and how they can change the way that they work.
Okay, one particular client that we worked with, we called it, just to make this real for people, daily cash flow forecasting.
Yeah.
5-6 data sets that they were able to put into their LLM, and it was not perfect, but it allowed them to talk about what was happening on a daily basis, not wait for the end of the month.
Yeah.
And it was as easy as load the right data sets, even ask the tool, what could I do to make this stronger, more accurate after you get kind of some history behind you? So interacting with the tool in that way and making sure that you understand, what you are missing so as to improve your models is another thing that these tools can do.
Yeah, I've seen a couple of those conversations, Tom, and it's amazing when I look across the table and they say, wait, this can help me with my cash flow forecasting? Tell me more, how we do that. And, it's a repeatable process. It's inflows, it's outflows, right? So once again, setting the table, changing the starting point. How do you get all that data from inflows and outflows into a system so then you can review, you can look at it, and you can put process around? And like you said, can it get you directionally correct, right? It doesn't actually need to be 100% specific because you're in an FP&A role and you're giving guidance, you're giving structure, and then you can always dial in and get the number correct, but at least it gives you an angle on where you're headed.
Yeah, more art than science in the FP&A function, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so let's get into science.
Okay, let's do it.
And we do believe that, the finance function will come closer and closer together with the advent of AI. That close process, if it is in real time, should bring FP&A and accounting to the table, at the same table, very early in the process, right? But let's talk about that, the real-time close. Fact or fiction, what is out there in the market? What are you seeing? What is the pathway to get there?
The most misunderstood item around real-time close is the definition of real-time close. If you look at the close now, it's batches, right? We're going to have something happen overnight. So when Tom gets in the morning, he's ready for it. We're going to have something happen midday, right? And these batches are a collection of tons of data. Then there's processes that happen and it slows the close down, right? We're waiting for something. So in looking at a real-time close, the first thing to identify is what are the batches doing, right? And why do we need them? How do we change the batches? So we can go to more real-time processing. We can do things like reconciliation. We can even have controls and testing, like this is a good one. The new intersection that's created in your ERP that somebody books $100,000 to, and it's day 5 of the close and you realize there's a new piece of data you've never seen before. Imagine if you could see that in the middle of the month, just by an email that says, hey, somebody in the organization lit up a new intersection in the ERP, and then you can go investigate and research that, see if it aligns with the budget, right? And be able to use those types of tools to just decipher simple things in the close. Even things then like variances, right? Flag them. When you see a variance that's too high, these tools are able to do that, giving you information prior to the close, not waiting for in the close to get it done. And that's how you get to a real-time close and accelerate your close as part of that. That foundation also will allow you to explore other areas where you might be able to optimize a close that you're not even thinking of right now.
One of the things that's often talked about is model drift and the worry that you're not building the completeness into some of these models. But what we're not talking about enough is some of that continuous monitoring and instant controls that you can build at your fingertips to monitor your process and give you the kind of the blinking red light in the midst of not only the month-end close, but during the month. Those journal entries get booked all month long, right? Yeah. And if that's the case, then just call the intersection or the alert out at that point in time. Yeah. So now you're getting into more of that daily concept where you're looking at not only controls or flags, but what's happening over the course of an entire month.
And I think there's 3 other things in addition to that we're seeing in the real-time close. One is the automation for accruals. Whether it's using historical data to book the next accrual or using tools that are able to scrape PDFs to read a contract and book an accrual. Flux reporting, flux analysis, right? It takes companies say they close in 5 days, but then 20 days later, they finally get their flux analysis out. Imagine being able to do this as part of the close with Gen AI and real-time kind of insights. And then the final one, account recs, another one where people are doing this post-close. Imagine being able to reel that back in and doing that as truly part of the 5-day close. And being done at day 5 with everything, close, reporting, flux analysis, and account recs.
All the way through.
All the way through.
FP&A and accounting at the table, 5 days, all the way through. So much of what you just mentioned, reconciliations, journal entries, they are backed by distinct set of rules and accounting policies. And rules-based, policy-driven is highly subjective to automation and AI, right? So, the accounting close is absolutely a target, something you can orchestrate and get done faster than ever before.
Yeah, no, there's tons of opportunity there. There's a lot of manual effort, and the AI and the automation really help when there's a lot of manual effort. And it's ripe for an end-to-end analysis, but also then infusing the right AI and the right automation to start optimizing the process.
Yep. So optimizing the process, and we talked a little bit about controls and how you can start to incorporate that, the kind of real-time monitoring. But how do you get audit ready in this world? So many of the CFOs or chief accountants particularly have been more hesitant than other clients that we've talked to start. And how do they get more comfort that they can get to auditability?
Yeah. So I'm not an auditor. I've never been an auditor, but this question is coming up a ton as I work with our audit teams, our risk management teams, and helping our clients as well. And, I look at that this is no different than any other controlled system. Sure, it's AI, sure, it's new, right? And sure, there's some unknown about it. But when we implemented our new ERP 10 years ago, or we implemented a new EPM system 5 years ago, maybe another financial system that's helping us, those are controlled financial systems that fall under audit. And between version control, data lineage, segregation of duties, and access, right? You were able to get your auditors comfortable with this is what we implemented, this is what it's going to do, and this is how we're going to use it, and here's how we're going to audit it. I don't look at these tools any different. There might be a little bit more scrutiny. There may be a little bit more regulation at some point, but it still should be treated as a controlled system, and the same things you do to prove out your other controlled systems at least will be the foundation to prove this out. I actually think the auditability might even be a lot more straightforward compared to, let's say, an ERP system, because the agents and the things we're talking about log everything, right? There's traceability from beginning to end, where, I've seen some ERP systems where accounting logic is a black box and it's code written, typed by a person, and there's one person in the organization who understands it. So, we've gotten through those issues from an auditability and challenges perspective. Using it as a controlled system with the same framework with some additional controls added in is a great way to at least get comfortable and confident in starting to go down that auditability and governance work without slowing you down.
Okay, part of that has been some advice that we've been able to give around, you mentioned segregation of duties, access controls, making sure that access to certain data sets gets set up right. We just think of that as put this agent on your org chart. Yeah. Make it an employee that you supervise the same way. It's your new digital assistant, your new digital intern. And that's how we've talked to our clients about getting comfortable around it's really just one more person that you're putting on our org chart, but without some of the manual risk. So in theory, what you're saying here through this process is you've got a lot of chances for enhancement in your audit results and maybe even some efficiency there.
Yeah, and you made a really good point around the org chart. There's still a human in the loop. So you can look at it from an org chart perspective. I have a digital worker now helping me and my team complete task A, right? Complete workflow 2, whatever that may be. So with that, the auditability is still there, right? Everything is still there that you're used to, but you got to get comfortable with that digital worker. And you know what? If you're not comfortable, that digital worker shouldn't be posting. It should be analyzing, and the human comes in the loop, reviews the work that the digital worker performed, then the human can take it to the next step and put it in the system. And that kind of hybrid approach is a great way to get comfortable with the controls and get your auditor comfortable with controls, where they might be doing the analysis at the agent side, and then a human's coming in the loop to review and do the final posting. So there's integrity in the process, similar to how it used to be before AI.
Well, you should have been an auditor. Listen to you, rattling on.
I have learned
Mr.
a lot.
Compliance.
I've learned a lot from our audit team. They've kind of smacked my hand a few times.
Yes, we team with them often. So Harris, we have hit on all sides here of ultimately the record to report project, right? We started with FP&A, now we jumped in the chief accounting office. But just thinking through, really, that we're just talking about one big workflow here. We're talking about record to report, and that's what we talk to our clients about is end-to-end process. And really, there are inputs and there are outputs, and you are advising on great results, doing some analytics, helping these leaders run the business when you're in the finance function. So how are you helping clients think through how to incorporate AI into their end-to-end workflow, pulling this all together?
Yeah, we talked a little bit before, but I think it goes to two things. Determining if your process needs manual effort or judgment, right? And as you kind of break down a 20-step process, let's say, there's 17 of those processes that take manual effort, there's 3 that take judgment, right? Those ones that take manual effort are ripe for automation and AI. What is the most valuable point to turn it on is where we help our client. Is it step 1? Is it step 4? How do you string them together? But the important part is, until you get comfortable, use it for the manual effort. Don't use it for the judgment. And then embed it into workflows. And the really cool part about that is right now, I had a conversation last week and I'm like, well, how long does it take you to close? I'm like, I don't even know. We don't ever even know where we are in the close, right? Setting up an end-to-end workflow allows that traceability and lineage, no matter who's doing the work, whether it's an agent, digital worker, or a human, right? It's super important to be able to have that workflow for the consistency and predictability. And then that allows you to insert automation and AI at the appropriate time. It also allows you to do it step by step. Maybe you don't want to do all 20 processes at once, right? Do one, get it working, and then use those learnings and move it on to the next task, and so on. And that's really how our clients' teams are getting enabled and starting to do a lot of this stuff on their own. And then when they do want the help of getting it full end-to-end with full automation, calling us to help them get over that last hump, that last 20 or 30% that they may not have been able to do on their own or may not have understood the tools enough to do on their own.
Yeah, it's important to look at the end-to-end to really even set the baseline for how long does this take? How much is it costing me to do reconciliations every month? And is that where I want to invest in AI? That's where you're finding those big friction points and the big AI opportunities.
And I think the friction points or the triggers, sometimes I call them, are an important one because that's where the finance and accounting teams are clashing, like on a monthly basis, like whether it's, reclasses or whether it's, hey, the reports aren't formatted right. So, the Jumpstart program, which we've talked a lot about, allows us to identify these types of frictions and triggers and go into the teams and help with a Jumpstart mentality that, hey, we're not going to get this 100%. We're going to show you how to get this to 80% with the tools you have, really start to get some benefit and productivity. And then we're also going to highlight how we get the rest of that 20% so you can be fully automated and go through the entire process using next-gen capabilities and tools and setting yourself up for the future. I think we've got a great response from this Jumpstart kind of program because there's a lot of apprehension. There's a lot of lack of understanding. And the Jumpstart allows people to play with it, touch it, feel it, right? And get some outcomes where then they can say, look what we did, and be able to do it again in another area of the business, which has been super powerful and really impactful to our clients.
Yeah, and we're bringing our whole use case library into that picture, right? So we've done it before. We can show you exactly how to prompt into those. So Jumpstart has been a really effective approach for us. So Harris, you've talked about solving the budget process. You've solved the close process. You've built the end-to-end workflow. You're bringing big value into all of that. But one of the things you just talked about that we have found is that there is still a major skill gap in finance. And when we go out and we're talking to them about, hey, here's how you can use this tool for this, and the aha moment of, I didn't even know that you could put that data into a tool like that. So there's still this skill gap. And how do we help clients close that? And how should people think about getting upskilled in this realm?
The first one, I'll just go back to the basics, right? Even with the use of AI and automation, communication is still the most important thing that's going to help us get things done. And the person-to-person communication, as we talk to the record-to-report process, is still critical. We have these tools now that can really help. And with that, the skills gap is being closed in a couple ways, in addition to communication. One, just literacy. There's so many tools out there, and we can barely keep up with them as they get released every day. So be on the forefront for our clients of what's being released, what tools they have, how they can use them, helping them be inquisitive and learning, once again, the basics, what they can do with the tools they have. And then once they get comfortable with that kind of foundation, really then finding purpose-built or targeted trainings that may help them with their job in the next activity that they want to automate. And then I think the group share and the power of a knowledge center is probably the most important. Unfortunately, a lot of organizations operate in silos. AI gives us a chance to change that. And as we get information from our coworkers, as we get learnings for what they've done with these, how can we share that centrally so other people can leverage what other people have done to really upskill their talent, leverage what somebody else has done, and really start to move together as a team in using these tools and collaborating and thinking about what's going to be next as far as adoption, upskilling, but then the way we work going forward.
Yeah, I talked about this a little bit in the intro, but is the finance person of the future, are they product building? Are they more someone that's more adept at almost building an app and creating a user experience? Because that's what their analytics and storytelling will eventually be, right? In the hands of your customers and your stakeholders. So you have to think about how to use data in that way and then to create the user experience.
Yeah, and it really goes back to the user experience. The user experience is really tightly wound with storytelling, right? And what the data means, what the results mean. So I think it's a great point and a great call out.
Okay. Well, Harris, this has been extremely insightful, and I would love to just know, bring it home. Any final thoughts you'd like to share with everyone out there?
Don't find reasons not to get started. Don't say our data's bad. Don't say we don't know our process. Find reasons to get started. There's so many opportunities and tools out there that can help you. And getting started is the hardest part. You need to find one light bulb moment and let the momentum start going and get your team engaged. And it's not necessarily on the CFO. It's on the CFO team. And use the power of that team to whether it's more of the junior teammates that are just out of school and have been doing a lot of this, or whether it's some of the senior teammates that have more institutional experience. Get those people together and start doing it today. Because now's the time, and now's the time to accelerate before you're left behind.
Wonderful. So, Harris, thank you so much for being here. Really appreciate it. I always learn something from talking to you and have over the time we've worked together. And so many concepts that you have covered that just want to emphasize. So Jumpstart, we can help you with boots on the ground, get out there, get hands on keyboards and get quickly into the art of the possible, what's possible. And that is part of upskilling these finance teams, right? Getting them more information and having them feel confident about what these capabilities can be. You've talked also about the pathway to real-time close, real-time budgeting, or continuous budgeting and forecasting, and the pathway there, which is extremely important. And time to value in this space is really competitive advantage. If you can get those insights in front of people, you are scooping the competition, you are scooping other companies in the space. So really important that there's a pathway there. And part of that is designing the end-to-end workflow, as you said, and thinking about the key critical elements there. So holistic conversation. Hopefully you learned something today on Record to Report and how AI can help. But that's been Field Notes. And thanks again for joining us. We look forward to the next one.